Wall Street Memes Casino,
I'm fine.
and Sportsbook.
This is KUGAN CASSIUS for IFLTV.
Hello. We've been through this.
This is KUGAN CASSIUS for IFLTV. We're in Birmingham ahead of Denny versus Cash this weekend, live on DAZN. I'm delighted to be joined by my long-term friend, coach extraordinaire, Adam Booth. It's been a while. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you, Mr. Famous?
Mr. Famous.
How many is it? 1.4 billion.
1.3 billion.
Okay, my bad. Sorry. Boy.
How are you, first of all?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. This is one of them open-ended questions again. I'm good. I'm all right. I'm happy. I'm healthy. I'm connected with myself. What more do you want?
You've been a coach for like 2 decades now?
Too long.
2 decades.
Too long.
And you're still doing it. You're still there.
And you've been, like, I've never figured out what you've been, like a social media influencer, interviewer.
Guru.
For how long now?
14 years.
That's more than 14.
It isn't since 2010, October.
Is it?
Yeah.
There you go. 14 years, and you're still doing it.
That's one thing we've got in common. I've been doing it this long in my field. You've been doing it that long in your field, and neither of us have a fucking clue what we're doing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sometimes it feels like you succeed by default, right? Just because of the field you're in. Take this somewhere, come on, let's get
You're
somewhere.
saying that the other opposition isn't as strong as you, so it doesn't really matter what you do as long as you're better than them.
Well, that goes for anything, innit? As long as you only win if you...
That's a good question, actually. So are you happy?
You want to get philosophical?
No. Are you happy? Right. So to say you as a coach, yeah. Are you happy being like the best coach out there? If it meant that all the other coaches, which is not what I'm saying, obviously, but if all the other coaches weren't that great and you're just a little bit better than them, you're happy with that? Because I wouldn't be in my field.
I don't know. I never really think about other people, do I? I always only think about what I'm doing. As long as I'm happy, I'm happy. Hate losing more than I like winning, probably. That's what drives me.
You asked me that question earlier when we were sat around the table with the infamous Gary Logan, yeah. But you asked me that question with and I don't really know. I don't know the answer to that, but I think it is a good question.
Right? No, you've got to give this context because you and Gary were having a row. He's Tottenham, you're Arsenal. Gary made a very chippy little comment that, what was it, Arsenal bottled it in their last 16 games, or 18 games, winning 16, drawing 1. And you took umbrage to that, and I've got on my video, which I'll post later, you and Gary having a proper set to about that. And that's when I said, what's a stronger feeling? You hate winning, or you hate losing, or love winning more?
I would say, in any context, whether it's to do with what we were talking about Arsenal or just in life in general, I think the hate losing is like far outweighs the winning part. Yeah. Can you not post that video, by the way?
I can and I cannot. Yes. Why? Why don't you want me to post it?
I don't know. I am hench. It's just it was early this morning, and the staff here at the lovely hotel we're at in Birmingham had to come over at some point just to make sure that we was all right. Yeah.
You made a right kerfuffle, didn't you? Anyway, come on, let's go somewhere with this.
Let's talk about Felix Cash. Why? Why Felix Cash? I have to ask you, every fight you take on, because over the years you actually haven't taken on that many fighters, when you could have done. We've spoken about this before. What was it about Felix Cash?
I don't know. But you could ask me the question, why am I still doing this? And I don't really know. There's been a couple of conversations over the years about whether or not I was going to work with him. I think more so at the start of his career. And then I met with him and his dad. And when I had a meeting with him recently, I didn't think it was something I was going to do. But from the meeting, I was actually, I was more intrigued. So we did a little trial, and here we are. I mean, what was that, 8 months ago maybe? Something like that. And I enjoy coaching him. I'm not going to lie. It's a different type of fighter. I haven't coached someone like Felix before because of his personality, his character traits, and his fighting style. And no, I mean, I'm enjoying it. And he's a pro. Like he's got a wild element to him. But when he trains, he trains. When we talk or when we're going through stuff and wanting to perfect it, he really does want to strive to be as good as he can at things. And that's and I'm enjoying it. Really am.
Is this a fair comment? Felix Cash, for me, falls into this category of fighters that have been professional for a sufficient amount of time, but also we still don't know how good they are. Obviously, Felix had that great win against Bentley a couple of years ago, but he falls into this category of like, we can kind of see snippets of how good he could be, but we don't know. But he's been pro for a while now, so he does fall into that bracket of like a bit of an unknown quantity. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. He hasn't fulfilled his potential yet as a fighter, and he's been out the ring for extended period because of the cracks of life and mistakes or things he's done or injuries that he's had, and just life gets in the way. And a lot of the time, when you have a good fighter that doesn't make it, it is the cracks of life and the things that go on outside the gym and the ring that lead them down a path of not succeeding or fulfilling their potential. But it feels like, for now, we've got control of those reins. The European title is a great fight to get stuck into from the get-go in our relationship, rather than just an 8-rounder that's nondescript. He's 30 years old now, and it's time for him to put his foot on the gas and start rolling the dice and see how good he can be. We know he can fight, we know he can punch, and he's got good amateur grade, and it's time to see. So Saturday is a perfect fight for him to get back in the mix, prove what he can do, and make some success.
On paper, is Tyler Denny a more difficult fight than the perceived Denzel Bentley fight?
Don't know. We'll find out on Saturday night.
But on paper?
On paper, I would probably say that the Denzel Bentley fight might have been more challenging because Tyler's got losses and a draw, I think. But the flip side of that is that Tyler's one of these pros that's paid his dues, taken his knocks, stayed with it, stuck to his profession, and they become a bit more galvanised. So probably Tyler's got some experience that Denzel didn't have. And I think it is his experience and the fact that he'd been through the mill and stayed with it and had competitive fights and had to earn his position and prove himself that means that Tyler will give that challenge and that resistance. So I'm probably sitting on the fence and saying you could make an argument for both. On paper or in public opinion, I would say that the Denzel Bentley fight was considered more of a risk, but I don't look at Tyler like that because I've looked at him enough, and when you look at his career and how it's played out, you know that he understands what it's like not to be anywhere in boxing, and so he's going to do everything he can to stay where he is.
How many fighters do you currently train as a professional?
3.
Okay. So you'd list the other two.
Oh, David Adelaide and Josh Kelly.
So let's talk about Adelaide. Your first heavyweight in a while, actually. Always asked you why, because of you training and obviously a heavy association with David Haye back in the day, but we know you've had kind of stints with David Price and Mike Perez. Can't think of the other heavyweights, Joe Joyce, etc. But nothing kind of over a considerable length of time. So again, I'll ask you the same question I was referred to about why Felix Cash. What is it about David Adelaide? Obviously, against Fabio Baldi fell short in that fight. But what is it about Adelaide that ticks a box for you to want to train him?
Well, I was asked a few times if I would consider working with him, and it was the same scenario where, okay, come to the gym, let's do a trial. He's got a very engaging personality. I like him. He's definitely got potential, but he's a long way off fulfilling that potential where I could see he could be. And again, like as a coach, that's the challenge. For me, I'm I'm not interested in working with ready-made championship level fighters and just being that hired gun. That scenario has never really interested me. I like to see that the work I do makes a difference and is a part of the success that then follows. And I certainly see that in David, that there is a lot that he can improve on to be a much, much better fighter and be able to compete at a much higher level. But that is it, isn't it? I think that's the true challenge of a coach and the desire to coach, I think.
Yeah, I remember that old saying from years ago. I can't remember who said it, but it said, like, when you had someone like David Haye, like a monkey could have trained David Haye and he still would have got to. You look like you're offended by this comment, but I get what you mean. Certain people, not that David Haye was like a ready-made champion at the time, but literally anyone could have trained that. I could have trained David Haye and he still would have reached certain heights. But for yourself, don't get offended.
No, I actually do have something to say about
that. Okay. All right, no, you look like you're offended by what I'm saying to you.
I'm gonna say something.
I was half joking, by the way, as well.
I'm going to say something because you're absolutely right. David Haye's abilities and his genetic abilities and his punch power and his speed were God-given to him. But never forget that in the ABA semi-final, we got knocked out in the first round by Jim Twight, who was a middleweight. As a pro early in his career, he got knocked down heavily by Lalenga Mock, who was a super middleweight, and David was a cruiserweight. After 10 pro fights, he fights Carl Thompson and gets his arse handed to him and stopped in the 5th round, where I throw the towel in. So there were so many moments in time where it was like, oh, okay, yeah, well, that was it. That was his level. Couldn't take it. Didn't have an engine. But together we strive to try and fill in those gaps to turn him into the fighter that he ended up being. And as a cruiserweight, and in that period before the Mormek fight and after the Macronelli fight, I'd match him with any cruiserweight. So he showed that he could fulfill his potential. But don't for one second think that that journey with David wasn't probably the most mentally, emotionally torturous time that went on for years because of the things that he needed to do to fulfill his potential. So you're right. What was your phrase?
A monkey.
A monkey could have trained David into success, but that monkey would have had to have a lot of patience and a lot of understanding to get through that period.
Could you sit up just about an inch? Because you seem to have slouched as this has gone on. Hold on. Now you're too high. That's it, perfect. No, that was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek comment with that. But to be fair, though, I think it doesn't matter who you are.
What was your original question then? What was your original question?
No, but it's when you're talking about you don't want ready-made champions, like, and so you look at someone like a Felix Cash or you look at someone like a David Adelaide, who are still in some aspects of their journey, career, whatever, very, very raw. Especially Adelaide. I mean, we saw that a little bit of that in the Wardley fight as well. But we can see there's enough elements of Adelaide there that could be worked on to get him to where he should be or needs to be.
Yeah, I think from the outside you think, well, there's something there, but you're not quite sure what it is, and you're not quite sure how far it will go. And that's the challenge.
I'd be your greatest challenge. Do you remember when you was going to train me for like a white collar fight, which didn't happen?
Why didn't it happen?
It didn't happen because you were too expensive, and I couldn't.
Why didn't you have the fight? Why didn't you have the fight?
Because you were too expensive.
No, bollocks. I would have done it. Don't blame me for you not getting in the ring. Why didn't you get in the ring?
I don't know. I didn't want that kind of, and I didn't have a question. Yes, go on.
Did your arse fall out?
I'm not saying my arse fell out, but like someone said to me the other day, like, would you still do it now? I'm like, I'm 42 now, and I've got a daughter, which is a massive like reason why I don't really want a viral video of me getting sparked out to be on the internet for ages for reference back at any point.
Welcome to the world of boxing and combat sport.
There is a rumour, or several rumours, reports, whatever, that Josh Kelly's next fight will be against Liam Smith. Can you make any comment on if talks are being had or etc., or if that's a possibility?
I have heard that same rumour. There are conversations happening and it's looking promising.
Very interesting fight.
I think so. Do you think so?
I love that fight. Absolutely love that fight.
Why? Why?
I think for the stages of their career, both for different reasons. Obviously, Liam's coming off the back of the second fight with Chris Eubank. Can't go in against just a, not going to use the term nobody, but you know what I mean, just a tick-over fight. Liam wants to be in a big fight. I think Josh Kelly kind of ticks that box for him to be a big enough name, and for Kelly, how inactive Kelly's been, looking for that big fight again after the Williamson fight, then I think that ticks the box both ways. So yeah.
So it's a fight that excites you.
I'd love to see that fight. I've got not to lie. That's a fight that I would make sure that I was heavily present.
And it's that level of interest that will be the reason why the fight would happen. So let people know.
Okay, right, I think we've got another 5 minutes, so I'm going to try and drill you about some topics in boxing, which we like to do, obviously, with your expert opinion. I'll pick up on a comment, actually, Johnny Nelson made last week. I don't know if you saw it or not. He doesn't believe that Tyson Fury will fight Oleksandr Usyk in this rematch, which has been announced for December 21st back in Riyadh. I need to go into kind of specific reasons why Johnny Nelson believes that. Johnny Nelson stated that to him is his opinion. Can you see an argument to why Johnny Nelson would think that that fight on Tyson's behalf will not happen on December 21st?
Pretty abstract question. I have no idea what goes on inside Johnny Nelson's head. If you're asking me, do I think the fight will happen? Yeah, I do. I do think it'll happen.
I haven't really spoke to you, obviously. I know this has been like a month on, but did you see enough in Tyson's performance against Usyk, especially in the first half of the fight, to suggest that he can put what's wrong right and beat Usyk? And if so, what is that in your opinion?
Yeah, I can. I think he had the fight in his hands around 7 and 8. But I think that because Usyk had made him work at a much higher rate mentally than he's ever had to before, so mentally, physically, emotionally, the rate that Usyk was making Tyson have to work took its toll. And when he had the fight in his hands in the 7th and 8th round, he couldn't put his foot down because he needed that period to get himself back together. And when he was in that period, that's when Usyk catches him and hurts him and turns the fight back in his favour. But I think after the first couple of rounds, once Tyson adjusted to the tempo of the work that was going on, the mental pressure that he was being put under, he actually, I thought, took control of those rounds from round 3 onwards, but it took a lot out of him. What I think he needs to do is, now he's got the experience of being in the ring with Usyk and having to work at that rate, that he remembers that and uses that as his preparation. And if he does that, I think energetically and mentally he'll be better prepared for that type of fight.
Sorry, Adam. A lot was made of what was going on in the corner, which you, as someone who is in a corner as a head trainer, did you see people's viewpoints about what was perceived too many voices in the corner, etc., etc.?
No, because it depends on what Tyson's norm is. You know, if it didn't have a negative effect on Tyson, then it's fine. But you've really got to ask him, and you just look at that scenario, because if that's how it goes on in the gym, what you want in a fight is to repeat what goes on in the gym. And if there were more than one voice in the gym, in the build-up, in the preparation, and that was the norm, then that's fine. But you have to ask them and talk to them about that.
Interesting. I think there was a question mark, like I said, about, because we've never seen Tyson Fury in a situation where he's had to wake up on that Sunday morning having lost a professional fight. I think the closest was probably when he drew with Wilder in that first fight. And after the Klitschko fight, we saw kind of a decline in Tyson Fury's personal life. So this was interesting to see how he does react to suffering his first loss as a professional. That video went out, which people made a complete whatever of. I mean, him on a night out, etc. We saw a video of him posting for the first time he's back in the gym. But his mental state is actually quite important into this next 6 months until that rematch, isn't it, for someone like Tyson Fury?
Yeah, but one thing I see from the outside looking at Tyson is that he has evolved as a man, and seems to have such a good understanding of his ups and his downs in life, and the fact that nothing really matters. And I think he's got a healthy perspective. And so he got drunk. Like if you say, well, you got drunk, so you're not going to succeed, you must be a mental wreck, then you've got to go back through history and look at people like Roberto Duran or Hector Camacho or Sugar Ray Leonard or any of these guys that would fight ferociously and train ferociously, but then they'd also celebrate ferociously as well, and it was probably just the same as that.
Ricky Hatton.
There you go. There's enough examples to prove that you can get drunk and full face first, get up, go to the gym, get yourself back in shape and perform.
Wasn't a dig at you, Ricky, if you're watching this.
Sounded like one.
Yeah, well, it could be. Go on, take it. Hang on, how far are we from Manchester? Who wins? This is a question that comes to my mind. Peak Oleksandr Usyk, which arguably could be right this second, versus a peak David Haye at cruiserweight. Who wins?
I'm always going to pick my man David Haye on that one. The David Haye that fought Matt Granelli.
Not that Usyk's a cruiserweight anymore, but well, he might come back down. Who knows? Last one before I let you leave. Strongly rumoured that next week will be announced Anthony Joshua's next fight, which is supposedly against Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois in his last 2 fights has absolutely earned the right to be in the mix of these fighters, with his wins over Big Baby Miller and recently against Filip Hrgović. What are your thoughts on that fight? And can Dubois, which would still be considered, I suppose, an upset if Dubois was to beat Joshua, but in majority of people's eyes, but what do you think about that fight?
I like it. And I think actually the thing that was bad for Daniel in his last fight was the amount of right hands that Hrgović was catching him with early in the fight. I think he could turn that and flip it into a positive and actually use that to not let that happen next time. And I think that he's also proved that he can dig deep, because the thing about Daniel before was when he lost to Joe, when he had those, or he lost to Usyk, it's like, all right, well, did he actually have it in him when it's not going his way and it's starting to hurt? Can he bite down and put it back on someone and prove that he can be in there and come back from a bad spot and win a fight? And he certainly did that with in the last fight with Hrgović. And again, in the fight with Miller, the one thing Miller's going to test you is your ability to just keep working, because, all right, he might not outbox you, but he's going to soak up everything you give him. So in those 2 fights, his last 2 fights, I think there's a big progression in the career of Dubois. And we know that AJ has the grade at the high level. But I just think you still got to make AJ the favourite. But I just think Daniel can make it a much closer, trickier fight than I think people might give him credit for.
Should be, we'll see. Boxing's full of surprises, but it should be announced in the middle of next week. Right, we need to get to a press conference. That's your phone. We need to get to a press conference. So, love catching up with you. I think you look absolutely amazing. You look like you're glowing. And yeah, it's great to catch up again. Good to see you this week.
Love you.
Let's just leave it there, yeah? Yeah.
Wall Street Memes Casino,
I'm fine.
and Sportsbook.